Hello and welcome to another episode of the 60O podcast. My name is Tom Campbell. Great to have your company, and it is a thrill today to have on Tim Mander, former rugby league referee, 291 first games to Tim's name. Tim, how are you, mate?
Very well, boys. Yeah, going well.
Fantastic.
Bloody hot, but other than that, it's good.
Yeah, it is a bit warm.
It's very hot.
Yeah, it is a bit warm, that's for sure. Hey, guys, before we get into Tim's career, I just want to start by talking about something that happened during the week with the new rule change. And I suppose this will lead us into refereeing as well. So for those who don't know, the new rule change is for anyone who attempts a short kickoff now. If it goes out on the full or it doesn't make the 10, you will no longer be given the standard penalty, which would give you the option to go for 2. It will now just be a tap from 10 meters out if you're at the goal line, or if you're kicking off, it would just be a set restart effectively. Tim, can I get your thoughts on that?
Look, I only found out about it myself during the week when I read the paper. Look, I will say rugby league's quite different from a lot of sports because it changes the rules regularly and is very flexible and tries to move with what's happening, at the time. And things like the corner post change, which has now led to spectacular tries, has been one of those positive changes. I suppose what they're trying to do is encourage the guys to continue to do these risky kicks. There's a part of me that says, well, there should be a risk reward, and okay, if you want to get some sort of advantage, that there's a risk to that, and that therefore, if you get it wrong, you're penalised for it. Quite literally. So that, let's see how it goes. But as I said, I can only imagine they're trying to encourage it to happen because they think that's more of a spectacle and more of a contest. I saw Ben Hunt's comments during the week. That's where I read it in the paper, and he was sort of a little bit suspect about it. So I'm happy to look at it, but it's important that they don't change rules too often or too many, because it does get a bit difficult for the spectators, let alone referees, to keep up with stuff. But yeah, it's not.
It's funny you say that, and it's quite amusing at times. You talk about the spectators trying to keep up with the rules or whatever rule changes, but this is one of those ones where it amazes me how many first grade footballers don't even know the rule that you can't touch the footy within 10 meters. So yeah. And I think it. Well, that yeah,
that is embarrassing. It's one of those classic ones where I'm a golfer as well, and there's no truer statement than knowing the rules can be the greatest advantage, and used to your own advantage. And over the years, players have picked up on things, having your foot out of touch and catching the ball in the full. I mean, no one did that 20 years ago. Because no one knew it. Yeah, no one knew you could do it. So, if you don't know that you can't, touch the ball within 10 metres from a kickoff or whatever, well, mate, there is something wrong. So 100%. I agree with you, though.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
It's one of those ones where, people get on their high horse as well, especially with the age of social media, and like to go off the handle about a certain decision or something that's happened in a game. And 9 times out of 10, the person blowing up is actually wrong because they just don't know the rule or don't understand the rule. So that's a frustration for mine. With that new rule, tinkering of the rule or the interpretation of it, I don't actually think this one is going to be an enormous change, because it'll encourage more of a contest, I think, or I believe, because, there's less risk involved because you're not going to concede 2 points. So if you're down by 2 or it's even, obviously you're more inclined to have a crack at it now. But just thinking over the last few years where that short kick has came in, do you reckon we see once every 2 or 3 weekends, someone get it completely wrong? Maybe once a weekend where someone gets it wrong, if that?
No, I agree. No, it would be at least that. But the counter argument to that is that there is a skill involved with this. right?
Yes.
And to kick it 10 metres, and to be in a position high enough so my players can get in there and contest it, there is some risk. And I just do like the idea of risk reward, and that therefore you have to think about before you do it, and you've got to execute it properly. So I'm not, I don't think it's a terrible change, but I just think that there's an aspect, of rewarding good play, and also realizing that if I don't get this right, so for example, if I'm 2 points behind, they're 2 points behind the opposition.
Yeah, 2 and 3. Yeah.
I'm probably not going to take the risk. So that option's out. And
exactly.
I don't have a problem with that. But now there's no risk, really, because the opposition was going to get the ball anyhow. So that's the only part of it. I just think it's a bit of a free hit now. And do you deserve it? Do you deserve a free hit when you've been pinned in your own in goal area? So the attack's done that. They've done that. Well, do you deserve it? You probably don't deserve getting any advantage.
Well, Tim, you mentioned the fact. Sorry, Steve. Tim, you mentioned the fact that rugby league's not afraid to change a rule every now and then.
Yeah.
Are refs consulted on that, or were they when you were a part of it?
Yeah. Yes, they are. Look, what's very important for referees, and this would always be the issue for referees, is that you want to take subjectivity out, right? So you don't want a referee having to make a judgment, where possible. So the referees are in favour of anything that makes the decision-making process easier, making decisions more black and white. So a classic one of that, which they've totally changed the original intent of the rule. I remember this and the reason it actually happened. So you remember people had passed out the back line and guys would come in for a smother tackle, and the pass would be happening, and then it'd hit the hand of the defender.
Yeah.
And there's this, you had to work out whether you play at it or not, right?
Yeah.
Now, that's a subjective thing that a referee has to do. Did he play at it or he didn't do it? Then we had football coaches come in and tell us, and in fact, our referee at the time, our referees coaches was Peter Louis, a former football coach. He goes, mate, they're playing at it every time. We go, what do you mean? Well, so when they go and do that smother, that's the reason they're doing it. They really are playing at it. So the intent of the rule change, which was to stop, and I remember what happened, it was Broncos, Wendell Saylor did one of those, and Wayne Bennett argued he never played at it. He could have picked it up and ran away for a try, and the referee pulled it back, and then they changed the rule. They said, oh, right, you've got to play at it. Sorry, this is a long-winded response. But what I'm saying is that now that rule now, basically, they never say he didn't play at it, right? And they lost the intent.
It's straight up, isn't it?
And they lost the intent of the rule. That was the whole idea of the rule change, was to change things. So that's the type of thing that referees don't want to be involved with. And we're probably happy with that result because you don't have to make a subjective decision. But yes, the referees are consulted, but trust me, they're not the major stakeholder. The major stakeholder is usually the coaches. And I like to think in recent years, a spectator, which is what it should be.
Well, Tim, I'd like to ask you.
What I was going to say before, mate,
right,
sorry to interrupt, but I think flowing on from what Tim was saying before, and you touched on it a little bit yourself, they're not scared to make rule changes now, and willy-nilly. And the one thing that I have noticed is, not always, but at the moment, the people in charge aren't afraid to, identify or put their hand up when they've got something wrong, and essentially change it back or look at changing it again. So hopefully, if we see that this new rule change is not working, or people are taking advantage of it, which smart coaches will, they'll find a loophole or find a way to get an advantage. Maybe we change it back, and someone like Peter V'landys, I really don't think he cares either way whether people like his decision making or not, because he'll just make a decision and run with it, and then change his mind and run with it. So
he does. Look, the danger is keeping the fabric of the game intact. And it, so that's been one of my biggest issues with the video referee. And I was there from the instigation of it. I video refereed 200 games myself. Is that dragged out, drawn out process, which was happening. I think they've got better at it. Totally changes the nature of rugby league, which is free flowing, fast. You got to be fit. You shouldn't be getting 3-minute breaks. And that was an area that, and they're continuing to finesse it. And I think that they're getting better and better and better. I mean, the real change that I've not been comfortable with has been the one where you don't penalise guys at the 5 metres and you do the 6 a game or the ruck. I just do not like it because it's too much of an advantage with momentum when you get a couple of those back to back. And I think players are less likely to do it if they're going to be penalised rather than, just 6 a game. I just think referees are probably more likely to do 6 a game than they are to penalise. So you'll probably see more of them. So I don't, a team gets on a roll and it's nearly impossible to stop them if they get a couple of those things. So I've always been a little bit uncomfortable with that one.
There's one thing that frustrates me more than anything when it comes to referees. And I know that's a thankless job. I totally understand that. And you brought it up there, so I'm just going to touch on it. And it's when the bunker gets a decision wrong, because they're the ones that have the advantage of slowing it down in real time. I'll never criticize an on-field ref for a wrong decision because they get one look at it and that's it. But when a bunker gets it wrong, so you've been in the video ref in that position. Can you tell me, is that actually more stressful than being on the field?
Yes, it is. It's funny. I've seen the full evolution. So we initially started with one bloke in there. And of course, we didn't have all the technology that they have now. We totally relied on the director, the TV director. And mate, these directors originally, especially from one particular television station, closely guarded their control of the game. And they would give you what they felt was right, okay, rather than what you needed. Then they'd be in there telling you, hurry up, come on. This is the director telling the video referee.
In your ear while you're trying to make
it. Yeah. Come on, mate, because he's worried about the production and what it looks like and, what people at home are thinking and all this type of stuff. And we'd had so many examples of very obvious decisions being wrong. And what happens is that, or what did happen at that time, is that you become very blinkered. So you can see you're focusing so much that you either overread something or you miss something else that's in the picture, but not what you're not focusing on that. So then we put in the reserve referee, okay, to be in the video box as well. We thought we need another set of eyes, and that's definitely improved things. And really, the bunker now is a evolutionary process that's been, now you've got 3 or 4 blokes in there and you've got every angle and they're in control of it, which is the big difference. And they're seeing things that we haven't necessarily seen at home as well. So
because they get different views, don't they? They get everything at once. Yeah,
they do. Look, it's like going to a lunar space module. Seriously. Yeah. So I think that, but to answer your original question, I'd made decisions, and we review them every week. On the Monday, we go through all the decisions, and I would then look at the decision. I'd look at it there with cold hard facts of the day, and couldn't believe the decision I made. I think, what the hell? What was I thinking? And also when you're refereeing, you're running all the time on adrenaline. You're acting automatically, spontaneously. When you're the video referee, in some ways you're more relaxed, right? And then suddenly the decision's with you. So I was involved with the famous 1999 penalty try decision.
Grand final.
With Chris Ward. So Chris Ward was the video referee, but I was the reserve referee. And I was with him in the video box. And, mate, when you realise, and I turned to Chris After we saw the first replay, we thought, oh, no. Then we saw the second replay, and seriously, there was stunned silence in the video box. And then I said to Chris, I said, mate, you're about to make the most significant decision in the history of rugby league. Don't want to put pressure on you, mate. And fortunately, it was an obvious one, from a refereeing.
It was a penalty try.
Yeah. But
as a Storm fan, it was very obvious. Very obvious.
Yeah, but the issue was the significance of the decision. Yeah. Right, this was going to win a team the grand final, the last decision of the year. So that's, again, a long-winded response to, yes, there is a different way of operating in the video box, or in whatever they call it now. And it's also the adrenaline does really come in, and it can make you do things that aren't normal.
I was going to ask, mate, like, I can only imagine, obviously when you're out in the middle and your heart rate's through the roof anyway, and you've got to have such a high level of fitness to keep up, let alone make decisions. The spike in the heart rate when all of a sudden, someone's lining up a kick from the sideline, and then the ref blows the whistle and we're going upstairs and a big decision's got to be made. I can imagine it's only human that the guy or girl up in the bunker, the heart rate would just immediately spike. It'd go through the roof, for that split second, and then you've got to calm yourself and make a decision.
Well, what's happening, and this started when I was there, yes, that's right. So that's why they started putting first-grade referees, current first-grade referees, in the box. So when I was, my last couple of years, I did 2 games every weekend. I refereed a game, and I video refereed a game, and I usually did, in my last couple of years, usually the number 1 and number 2 games. The game I refereed and the game I video refereed. So now the advantage of that was that referees are used to the pressure, and you're up to date with everything. And that, not that some of the other guys weren't good. Don't get me wrong, but they were conscious of what you were talking about, and that, so let's just use the same guys that are used to that pressure and used to making decisions and not afraid to make a decision. And so that's what we did.
Tim, can I ask you, I just want to, it's fascinating insight that you're giving, and I just want to ask about another dynamic of refereeing. It's a bizarre situation that you're in as a referee, because in a lot of ways it requires a lot of teamwork between referees to get decisions right, to officiate games and everything. But in a lot of ways as well, it's very individualistic, and you're sort of focusing on your own career as well. You want to make good decisions yourself, and there's promotions there's promotions that happen within the game. We saw one just at the end of last year. Ashley Klein was top dog until he made a couple of bad decisions, and all of a sudden Adam G's refereeing the NRL Grand Final. And now, if it was up to me, I'd have Adam G referee every big game going forward, because he did a great job. Yeah. So all of a sudden the dynamics might have changed there. Can you talk to us about that? Does that create a lot of tension?
It's a good question. So prior to Super League, I was based in Brisbane the whole time. There was a few of us based up here. There's guys based in New South Wales, of course. They trained down there. We trained up here. And we never, and even the guys down there, you never did group sessions, right? You never did group examinations of things. It was all individual. And Billy won't mind me saying this. And Billy was by far the most competitive guy. And he would have intel that he would keep, because that would give him the edge. It was either intel or something that he did or whatever it was, because he wanted to be number 1. And so it was highly competitive. When Super League came in, and of course 5 of us went over to Super League, and we became professional. We were the first professional officials. By the way, probably nearly the first professional officials in the world in sport. NFL, Premier League soccer, AFL, none of those guys had professional. The only ones that did were tennis umpires. And so we were in competition with the ARL, and we wanted to be the best, and we wanted to be the best referees. So that culture of being individualistic was slowly broken down. So we would share, and we'd be helping each other, and we'd be looking at each other's games, and we'd be, ultimately in the end, the best referee is going to get through anyhow. But it was very closely guarded. So that's, I put Super League down, or the professionalism angle, down to us sharing information. The other big thing that changed was that every game was televised. So when I first started, you only had a couple of games televised. And therefore, you didn't see the other referees. Now that the public was seeing every game every week, it was incredibly important that we were consistent, that we were learning from each other. And so some of the best, most entertaining sessions you'd ever come to a referee session where you're reviewing the decisions of the weekend. Oh, mate, arguing back and forth and screaming at each other. And yeah, because it was, we're all very opinionated. Well, I am, and Billy is, and he'd have a particular view on advantage, and I'd have, no, mate, I don't agree with that, blah, blah, blah. And then we'd come to some sort of consensus on what we're going to do. So in the end, it became, well, what's best for all the referees rather than the individual referee? You still have that funny thing that you mentioned. I remember in 2005, which is my last year, Paul Simpkins was the favourite for the grand final. And I was, I'd done the grand final the year before, but Paul was favourite. And we went to that first week of the major semi. It was him and me. And Cameron Smith dropped the ball this far from the ground, and he awarded a try. Didn't go to the video. And I just knew straight away watching the game. I just knew, and Simo's one of my best mates. I go, he's gone. Yeah. And there's a part of you going, you little beauty, because you're going to admit, I've always compared it sort of, to a cricketer who gets dropped from the Australian side of batsman, and the bloke that replaces him, you probably want him to get a duck, and
he's probably one of your best mates. Yeah,
that's right. So there's the recognition that that's how it works. And I know Simo used to drive me to the airport to come back to Brisbane often because he lived around the airport, and I'd get the phone call through telling me I wasn't getting State of Origin appointment, despite being number one referee. And then I find out, I go, who's got it? I go, Simo. And I go, oh, Simo, you got the Origin game, and I'm absolutely devastated. And he's trying not to be gleeful because we're mates, but deep down he'd be going, oh, you little beauty. So it was a funny dynamic, but we had a good, when I was there, and I'm still sure it's the same, we had a very good camaraderie. And if I'm asked about anything that I miss, it's that with your colleagues,
And Tim, look, I imagine that time, Super League broke out, you went professional. Apart from the money and doing what you love full time, I'm sure that's one of the biggest things that also came out of it was we were training full time, being full time together, and the mateship that you would have got out of that with spending more time with each other instead of just once a week or during those reviews that you did.
Oh, we became another club, basically. The referee, and which is what it's like now. The referees became another club, and don't forget, during the Super League time, we were ostracised, right? Don't forget that the players and the teams that went with Super League, the ARL wanted them back, and they had that 1995 season where they're back. We weren't back. I couldn't referee under sevens, right? And I didn't referee for 2 years because of that in Australia. We went to England. So the reason I'm saying that is that we became even more closely knit because, one, it was a siege mentality, and two, we were in competition. Super League was in competition with the ARL.
So, Tim, sorry to interrupt, mate. Did you? I was like 15, 16 around that time it broke out, and I can remember a lot because obviously, being a fanatic and that age, you love something and you're passionate about it and absorb everything. I can't remember. Did you guys go overseas? Did you have to go to England to ref for a couple of years?
Yeah, well, you wouldn't have known. We were person non gratis, so I.
Yeah.
So
no,
I was part of the ARL referees, right?
Yeah.
I'd refereed 92, 93, 94 in the ARL.
Yep.
And Super League came in 94. Oh, sorry, they signed in 94. April Fool's
95 was the first year.
I could do an hour telecast on this, I'll tell you. But we signed, and the major reason was what you said. I wanted to be the best, and my competitors were signing. I thought, well, if I'm part-time and they're professional, they're going to be better than me.
Yeah.
So I signed. And then we were immediately sacked, right? And so we couldn't referee in Australia. So we refereed New Zealand, because Super League signed up all the other countries. We refereed New Zealand. We went to England, had stints in England. We refereed New Guinea. We refereed basically everywhere else to keep our hands in. So that was in 95. No, that was 95. So I had a year out. I was sacked in 94, about round 5, 94. Had the whole 95 out. We were waiting for the court decision, which would happen at the end of 95. Of course, we had the separate seasons in 96. No, 97.
97.
And then we came together in 98. Yeah. But refereeing was probably the thing that revolutionised the most. That's when the video referee came in. That's when professionalism came in. Yeah.
It's amazing how far it's come. I mean, my young fella is now 16, so he's around the age I was at that time. And the other day, I had to explain to him, we were watching an old game, what the in-goal touchies were. He's like, why are there extra refs in the in-goal?
Well, I'll give you
a few years.
I'll give you a good story about that. I was the first in-goal touch judge. They had a trial game in Toowoomba, right? I can't even remember what year it was. So I mustn't have been in first grade. It must have been
early
91.
Yeah,
early 90s. And this in-goal touch judge thing came in. We're thinking, what the hell? What are we going to do? So here we are. I still can't believe this. Out runs the referee. Out runs the 2 touch judges. And outruns the 2 in-goal. And we're carrying chairs. We went back behind the in-goal and we put a chair in and we're just sitting there. Then about 20 minutes later, John Quayle must have been watching the bloody the telecast, gets through a message, get rid of those bloody chairs, you know, so we can move around. So not many people, I don't get a chance to tell that story much, but I was the first in-goal referee.
Yeah, nice.
And it was a trial game in Toowoomba, and we had no idea what the bloody hell we're all referees, you know. We had no idea what we were doing.
Hey, we don't have much time left, but I just want to ask you, Tim, who helped you the most in your career as far as refereeing goes?
That's a good question. Again, look, going back to what you said earlier, it was really an individual sort of endeavour. Look, I had certain coaches over the years, former referees, that would give you good feedback. So I won't say there was any one person, but there were many guys that would teach you stuff that, you know, really helpful. And then you learn from each other, you know. I learned a lot from Bill, and we became very good friends, although we were competitors. He taught me a lot about fitness and the importance of it. And gym, I never did gym until I, started mixing with Bill, and to this day, I've been working in the gym for 30 years now, so it's become part of my life. So look, there was different people, but there was nobody, there was no one person, but quite a whole range of different mentors.
I've just got one question, and I know Tom had one that was similar. Hundreds and hundreds of games of footy that you've refereed or been involved in. Is there one that stands out that was the top of the pile for you? Just unforgettable. Can't believe I was a part of that game.
Look, there's a couple. There's nothing that beats your first grade debut. I had Balmain Parramatta. It's like it was surreal. I'm a kid from Brisbane watching the ABC Match of the Day on a Saturday, growing up, and then the week I got my debut, I was watching the game on Saturday at home, knowing I was going to be in Sydney the next day, and I just thought, I cannot believe I'm about to fly to Sydney to referee first grade. The 2005 grand final, which ended up being my last game, I was always going to be my last game. I knew I was retiring, which was the West Tigers Cowboys game, and that was a great season. Those two sides were so brilliant. But mate, one of my most memorable was I had in the 2000 World Cup, I had England versus Ireland at Headingley, and it was 20,000 crowd, which is basically capacity, and the singing. It was a tough game, mate. It was really, these guys were getting stuck into each other. I had a couple of sin bins. I handled it. I was told I handled it well, and I didn't send blokes off, which probably normally you would, because I understood the occasion. And that was that was a great memory. I loved it.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
That's great.
Tim, we can't thank you enough for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure. We might have to do a separate one on the tales of the Super League because it sounds like there's a few stories in
mate,
there.
I would love to tell you stories about that. I tell you, it was a unique time in Australian sporting history. And
Mate, I'm a footy nerd. I would eat it up.
Yeah, well, anytime. Love to come back. I love talking about it.
Tim, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure, boys. All the best.
This has been the 60O podcast, and that is full time.